Thank you for joining us. This is our first YouTube video that we're going to today talk with Larry Cantrell. I'm Dr. Deborah Braboy. We are counselors at Anchored Hope Counseling in Fort Smith, Arkansas. We're going to talk a little bit today about a premarital tool that we use with couples. It's called the SYMBIS, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it's something that we both got training on and we use with our couples, sometimes premarital, sometimes they're already married. But why don't you just kind of jump in and tell us a little about what you like about the tool?
Gotcha. Well, even before I do that, we'll give credit to the people that created it. Dr. Les and Leslie Parrott, they're wonderful counselors based out of Washington. They've been in the family ministry for many, many, many years. So they were the ones that created it, did a bunch of research into just marital success, the different dynamics of it, and are using this tool to help marriages stay together. Their passion, just like ours, is to see couples that are thriving and healthy. So what I love about the SYMBIS, though, is one, I didn't have to create it, so they did all the legwork, which is wonderful. But two, for me, one of the things that I love is it opens up communication on things that I think some couples don't talk about. You know, the old adage was marriages would end mainly for three reasons: sex, children, and finances. But what I've kind of discovered, and I think many other people have too, it's not really those topics, it's the lack of communication about those topics. So the SYMBIS actually does a good job of covering many different topics, like sex. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is just the mindset. What is your marriage mindset? And they've got 5 different ones. I won't go into detail about those, but they just kind of reveal just what is your perspective, what is your long-term view of marriage, and then so you enter it with that. Now, there's different ones that are healthy and there's other ones that are not so much, but it could be based off many different things like family upbringing, past marriages that you've been in, a number of different aspects. So it does cover those aspects. I love it, and the main thing again is it just gets couples to talk about these different topics that I think they're important.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier too. You know, couples they have these big proposals now, which puts a lot of pressure on guys. But
Yeah.
I just saw one on Facebook last night. I was telling you about where a whole student body got involved, and there were 2 teachers, and they had a little flash mob, and he proposed, and then they go into planning the wedding. And they never get married thinking they're going to be in that percentage of couples that don't make it. So the thing about this tool, it helps give them insight into all these different aspects of their relationship and where they're just coming from as individuals, because now they're going to be melding, you know, everything together.
Yeah.
And they don't always realize everything is everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, so you talked about the mindset, and they also cover expectations. That's one of my favorites to work with couples on. They identify what their mom's roles were, their dad's roles were, and then how they see themselves fitting into things such as doing the laundry, cooking meals, taking care of the children, yard work, things like that, paying the bills.
Yeah.
And so sometimes what I found with couples is they both have this rose-colored perception, and we're going to do all of this together, holding hands. And and sometimes I spend a couple of sessions with them going through those to kind of get practical and a little bit realistic.
Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite sections that I like using. Is there one that you really enjoy doing with your couples?
I really like working through the beginning assessment, where you start looking at the person's individuality, their autonomy. But one of the fun ones where it kind of gets it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a small but funny tension. It's that comic relief, because they have to list like their partner's annoying habits, these caution flags or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting watching them talk about their different annoying habits. And they never turn out to be big things, but you can almost see them tense up just a little bit when they're talking about those.
I had a couple once, and they were like, "But I thought you thought I was perfect." And he said, "Oh, but you are." Trying to, you know, but we still unpacked it because it's important, because those need to be identified and kind of worked through. So, it covers communication,
problem solving,
support networks. So they look at their family of origin and their relationships with, you know, their future in-laws and how they kind of see those are going to go.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes some of the questions that we get from folks are whether, you know, how expensive it is.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do then is we email them a link, and it's, I think, $35
Mm-hmm.
for them to complete the assessment.
And typically what would happen is you would come in for the very first session. We have a sample that we can show anybody that the Parrotts and the couple that did it with them, they have signed a release. So you get to see what an example looks like. And it's actually very colorful.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of little graphs and charts, so it's very informative. And so we sit down with you in the first session and just say, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you can expect. We'll show you the entire example, and so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. We introduce the price. It is $35, and that's per couple, not per individual. And yes, we do get your emails, and we send you a link. You fill it out, or once you click on the link, whoever the financial person is, the spender probably, or the saver, one of the two, will go ahead and pay that, and then that will cover both of you to take the assessment. So, but yeah, just $35. It's actually not that much. There's other assessments out there that are a little bit more.
Right. And they each get a link to their email, and they kind of want to complete that individually, not and then we get the results. We're notified that the couples completed it, and then we're able to print off the report.
Yeah. How long does it take them to complete it?
I don't think I've never asked, but I don't think it's very long, maybe 30 minutes or so.
And typically that's what I've heard too, is about 30 to 45 minutes. So don't overthink it. Just kind of put what comes to mind. Right.
Yeah, but it identifies so many different things that are valuable for us to be able to kind of work through with the couple when they come in. And another question that I've gotten is it only for premarital couples? Because it's called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. I found it to be useful with couples that are newly married, you know, a year or two in. What's your experience been?
Mainly, the Parrotts, when they created it, it was originally a premarital tool, but they've added some different things, so like blended families. So if you have a couple that has been divorced before and now they're remarrying someone else, yes, there's a section for that kind of helps them work through. Here are some things that could be issues, some warning flags or whatever, and helps them work on that communication. What was the question again? Mostly. Now, the majority that I've used it has been premarital, but I have done it with other couples as well. I have found, though, and just in my personal experience, and this isn't based on the Parrotts, I would like to know what they say, but I've tried using it before when couples were in a little bit more of a crisis, kind of coming in, and things just weren't very good. And I have found that they're just not in a place yet to talk about those things, to go through that. We've got to kind of de-escalate the situation and really work on softening each other up, leaning in, developing trust before we can get back into communicating some of these things.
Right. And you mentioned too, they've got a section for blending a family. And the divorce rate for couples that have already previously been married is higher than even for first-time marrieds. But my experience, I haven't had a whole lot of couples that have come in for premarital that have been married before. But that would be something I would strongly encourage, because you not only have those issues, but you've got the blending of the family, the children, and expectations, and setting kind of some family rules that all are going to abide by instead of her kids, his kids, and the conflicts that almost always brings to the marriage. It incorporates spirituality and their faith. It does. And sex, of course.
Absolutely, it's necessary.
We encourage that in a marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But sometimes they've had past partners. So that's almost always a caution flag that I see in my report that we kind of go over with couples.
Absolutely.
Another area that I always think is kind of fun is when we talk finances.
Yes.
So sometimes you might have two spenders or two savers. It's kind of fun when you have a spender and a saver.
Yes, which has been the majority of mine.
That's been the majority of mine.
I typically have one of each. So.
Right. Right. And it helps them identify the anxiety that they have about the knowledge that the other person isn't on the same page as them.
Right.
But also we can normalize for them that opposites attract.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be a negative or a bad thing.
Correct. No.
Yeah.
The Parrotts would say, in their book, by the way, just to go along with the assessment, you can purchase their book, which it kind of goes into even more detail of the assessment. Things you can read through, questions you can even ask yourself as couples at your home. But one of the things that they do mention is that finances are the number one stressor in any marriage, and it doesn't matter how much they make, whether little or a lot. It really comes down to just the priorities of how you spend it, and oftentimes people have different priorities, including, kind of going back to what you were saying, a saver versus a spender.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that actual section, it's just one page on finances, and it does break down, are you a spender, are you a saver? It even looks at fears. What are your concerns when it comes to money? So
Right.
lack of security and a number of other things.
Right.
And it does get into a little bit of how much debt are you bringing in.
Right.
So it doesn't actually show numbers or anything.
Right.
But it does say, you have to answer honestly if you feel like you're bringing a lot or a little. So.
And sometimes along with that is guilt.
Absolutely.
I don't want to saddle them with my guilt, my student loan debt, or whatever it might be. And, they didn't deserve that. And so that's a good time to process that, you know. If there's transparency, then they know what they're getting into. And that, in sickness and in health.
Yes, for richer or poor.
Richer or poor, that's what comes after. So, yeah.
And you said something that was key there. The beauty of doing it here or with anybody else, because ministers, whoever's been approved by the Parrotts to do this and has been to the training can guide you through the SYMBIS. But I think one of the things that we do here well is we provide a safe place for them to discuss some of these things that can be more difficult, even the guilt or the shame or the hurt from a previous marriage. So.
Well, and that brings me another question. People ask, like, how long do we meet with them to go over this report? So what's your, do you have a normal?
I think I do.
Okay.
And again, mine is probably more 12 weeks. I kind of like to walk through the pages slowly. There are some that we just fly through. Even the very first session, we kind of go through the first 2 or 3 pages pretty quick, because those are more just demographics, kind of surface level things. But once we start getting into the different mindsets, we start getting into things like finances, sex, even the dynamics that they bring, which is kind of like a personality profile. We start getting into some of those, and I slow down, and I basically will spend one session, basically an hour per page. So right around 12 is my comfort zone to really make sure that we can hash through some of these things.
Well, in the dynamics section, it gives us an opportunity to help them kind of normalize where men are coming from, women's perspective, and for them to kind of see just differences, not just necessarily in their future spouse, but just gender-wise.
Correct.
Some of these things are just to be expected.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the other questions that couples have actually asked me in the very first session is, how often should we do this? Is it weekly? Is it every other week? And some of that really just is based on when they're going to get married. So one of the things I like to encourage them to do is, let's schedule the sessions in advance to make sure you're done within a month of your actual wedding date. Because going through this stuff is good, but I also know that the last month right before marriage is when it really starts to get busy. You're really contacting family. And so even I encourage people, start sooner than later, and we can spread it out if we need to. I just don't want to kind of rush through it.
Right.
Because it is important.
Right.
I don't remember the statistic, and that's shame on me, but there actually is, the percentages of marriages that actually stay married are higher when those couples have actually been through premarital therapy.
Yes.
And so I don't want to rush through it. I
Right.
don't want to just kind of take it lightly. It's a big deal. I think even the Parrotts say we spend so much time and energy on one day.
On that wedding
day, which, don't get me wrong, it's important.
It's important.
It's a great day of celebration. It's amazing. You probably won't remember most of it anyway because you just be tired and everything from the energy. But it is important also to make sure that you're spending the time and energy for what comes after that day. So, so again, to answer that question, I do encourage couples to start sooner than later. Typically, again, though, if you did 12 sessions once a week, if you started at least 4 months before your wedding date, that would be my advice.
Right, that would be ideal. And in those conversations, I just consider those very sacred.
Oh yeah.
This is setting couples up for marital success in a society where marriages, half of them don't make it.
Yeah.
So it's something I count really as a privilege to work with these couples on. And I really encourage them to be, transparent with each other and with me,
Yeah.
because that's the only way we're going to really tackle the tough stuff.
Absolutely. Well, marriage is hard. I would love to say it's all roses and
Right.
candy, but it's not always
It's
that
not.
way. And so
Yeah.
it is tough. It does take a lot of work. So it is important to do this and,
Yeah.
and provide a safe place like you're talking
Right.
about.
Right. So these are a lot of the questions that we get in sessions and from people that call inquiring about premarital work or just marriage counseling. Maybe they're newly married and still trying to figure it all out. But if you have any other questions, you can put them down below in the comments or email us at the email address listed. We would love to get your feedback and your comments. We plan to do some future YouTube videos, and if there's an idea or something you're interested in seeing us talk about, we have 13 counselors here. We have some that specialize in EMDR, some work with couples, some work with people with anxiety and depression. We have nurse practitioners, so we could even talk about medication and compliance. So if there's something specifically that you'd be interested in seeing, please comment or email that information also.
And the other thing I would like to encourage you, like all YouTubers do, is I'd love for you to like and subscribe if you'd like to follow us and just kind of see what different information we may have, latest topics that are going on in mental health, different things that could be going on in marriages as well. So our main desire is just to help other people. And so we really would appreciate it, though, if you would like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.